While we wait, oh, okay. Now we will begin. Yay, Matt. Welcome, Ray. Yes, indeed. All right. All is well. All is well. We are gathered on another beautiful Sunday morning. Yes, if we could gather our attention here. Welcome to All Souls Unitarian Church. We welcome any newcomers that are here today and invite you to sign the guest book in the lobby so that we can be in touch with you. In this church, we like to be a welcoming, affirming congregation, so we like to take a moment to just turn around and greet everyone who's here. Just make everyone feel connected and welcome, and yeah. Just in time, come on in. This morning we're welcoming David Arfa to our pulpit. And I'm Sandra Boston. I'm your hostess for this morning. And we also welcome Brian Bender at the music and Matt at the technicals. And we greet anyone who's there on Zoom. Who's here on Zoom today, Matt?
We have Christine Bates, Christy Gressick, Cindy and Owen, Emma Morgan, Gary Pausner, Molly, and Trudy Brown.
Wow, okay. Welcome, welcome. Give them a shout out too. All right, now is the time for us to calm down, invite everyone to breathe deeply, come into the room, be present, be focused, be at peace. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude. Awareness and gratitude. Taking the time to look into one another's faces and see communion. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence here today. Let us take this time for quiet reflection as we listen in silence to the prelude. And now we will have our chalice lighting, and I've invited David to come and light the chalice if you want to follow in the bulletin and read together. We gather this morning as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of our life together. And now join me in the reading of our covenant. In this house, we covenant with one another to create a community on the foundation of love, to work together to promote equality, justice, and peace, accepting responsibility for our individual acts, to stand on the side of love, embracing the liberation of the oppressed and working to end discrimination and unjust privilege, to communicate with kindness and support, and to serve and compassion and commitment, to listen respectfully and value our diversity as a source of our collective strength, to learn and grow together, generously sharing our time, talents, and treasures, to celebrate the joys of discovery from the wonder of youth to the wisdom of age, to openly share our laughter and our tears, showing reverence for the divine in all that is. Blessed be. We'll now have our offertory. Every week in our church, we take up an offering, which gives us an opportunity to exercise the generosity of spirit that supports All Souls and its many ministries. We see this as an act of giving, of growing more generous in our hearts and in our actions, as essential to our spiritual well-being. We will now receive the morning's offering. Thank you. Let's join in singing hymn number 119. Stand as you're able. Let's start now. Once to every salvation comes the moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood and the good or evil side. Then to stand with truth is noble, and we share its wretched cross, for the cross of and Jesus is Now we welcome David to the pulpit.
I'll begin with a reading. It's written by the Rabbi Dr. Abraham Joshua Heschel. It's a telegram, kind of like a text. To President John F. Kennedy, the White House, June 16th, 1963. I look forward to privilege of being present at meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. Likelihood exists that the Negro problem will be like the weather. Everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. Please demand of religious leaders personal involvement, not just solemn declarations. We forfeit the right to worship God as long as we continue to humiliate Negroes. Churches, synagogues have failed. They must repent. Ask of religious leaders to call for national repentance and personal sacrifice. Let religious leaders donate 1 month's salary towards a fund for Negro housing and education. I propose that you, Mr. President, declare a state of moral emergency. A Marshall Plan for aid to Negroes is becoming a necessity. This hour calls for high moral grandeur and spiritual audacity. I'll open up a parenthesis just to say good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Can you hear me all right? Is this all right? Okay, good. Very loud. Thank you. I want to just share how special and meaningful this is for me, being a Jewish man, to be invited here in your church to give some, words here today. I really feel that the sense of welcoming and that everyone's welcome here from this community, and really grateful for being here. Thank you. As you can see from the title that I chose this morning, I tried to get the word moral in it even more. And I was thinking maybe with some creative commas, I could get another 1 or 2 or 3. But I feel, okay, that's enough. And my hope is just to open up this conversation with a new framing of language, of a moral landscape. And it's something that is obvious, it's common sense, it's already within all of our experiences. This hymn we just sang was filled with moral life and activating our moral life. And for me, I grew up without the concept, really, of moral life. And what I mean by that is I certainly learned not to cheat, not to steal, not to lie, not to hurt other people, but we didn't give it that context of a moral life. In fact, I learned morality is judgmentalism. It's about being judgmental, be it a goody two-shoes, be it being a Boy Scout, being a moral majority. That there was a sense that it wasn't relevant in a way. It wasn't accessible. It wasn't part of my everyday life. And going to college, learning about moral philosophy, I just thought 100 ways to define goodness. It's what's the point? I never got it in a way. And it's kind of fundamental. So I want to share this journey of how do we kind of reclaim this sense that we all live in a moral landscape all the time, no matter who we are. We have a moral compass. Even the greediest person, even hedonism, is a value that comes following. So I'd like to share some examples from my life, try and find a way to share this, and particularly the sense of what these words, moral injury, moral distress, moral outrage, might be pointing to, and what is moral resilience, moral courage, let alone moral grandeur. What is that? I'd like to begin by just sharing a few examples from a trip to Warsaw that I took about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. Once I had my first CD of stories, you could apply to festivals. And there was an international storytelling festival in Warsaw, Poland. And they accepted me, and I was so excited. Took grants and how to arrange my life to get there. And I'm in the airport, and I'm finally driving to Warsaw. And exhausted, relieved, excited. And then I see the sign with the arrow pointing to Auschwitz. And immediately I just began to tremble, began to sweat kind of out of my scalp, and my heart was beating. Because I knew that Polish word Auschwitz is the English word for Auschwitz. And I was like, where am I? I went to a Warsaw Ghetto Memorial, and they had a little piece of the wall. It was inside of an apartment complex, in a courtyard. The apartment building is 5, 6 stories high. You had to go through a gate. It was very hard to find. And the thing is, they didn't tell me how to get out. And so I found myself, after my prayers, locked in to this memorial. And there were 2 gates. I was going back and forth. It took all of my strength not to panic. And they didn't tell me. Finally, I learned, there was a button up in the dark stairwell that opened up the gate. And they said it with a laugh. I'm walking down the street. There's an art store, and there's a big picture, an oil painting, in the front window of the art store, of a table filled with silver coins, gold coins, jewels, pearl necklaces, jewelry. And there's a group of men standing around it that are obviously Jewish. They have tallis, they have big pot bellies, large noses, beady eyes, cigars, and they're actually ogling the money, and it's so offensive. I turned to my guide, this is so offensive. This is a terrible anti-Semitic trope. What is this doing here? And he said with a laugh, oh, people buy this. They buy it for good luck in business. I can still feel it now, just sharing these stories, the intensity of this experience. And learning that there was a park right outside the Warsaw Ghetto Wall where there was a Ferris wheel, and people would go on Sunday picnics. And there'd be in a Ferris wheel, it would be above the wall itself, hearing all the sounds of gunshots, of violence, of death, while they're picnicking. The first book I read after this trip to Poland is called Amazing Grace by Jonathan Kozol. He's an amazing educator, scholar, who really details the inequalities of our educational system. And he spent a year in the South Bronx with elementary school kids and their families, and he's a great storyteller, bringing to life what it's like there. And it's heart-wrenching because these elementary school kids, they can't go outside after school, because there's gun violence, there's drug use on the street corners and in the park. And their school itself, not enough books, not enough desks. The roof is leaking, bathrooms not working, right? And then he says, and 5 miles away, there are high schools with swimming pools and weight rooms. And at that moment, I actually screamed. I threw the book across the room. I've never done that. I threw it across the room. I just howled. Because here is this merging, right, of my own complicity. I went to that high school, and I know what it was like in inner city Detroit, and yet always in my mind they're separate, right? And so this sense of responsibility just flooded me, and I began thinking about what does it mean to pass Auschwitz, the road to Auschwitz? What is it like living here passing Amherst, or Turner's, also sites of mass murder? What is that experience? Let me just offer, these are intergenerational experiences that kind of contribute to this incredible moral distress, moral injury, and moral outrage, both when fundamental values get ignored, either by others or yourself, right? When fundamental values are ignored, either by others or yourself. That causes incredible distress, injury, outrage. And those are personal stories, but it's not just that, right? It's not just that. It's also examples from my time I worked at Providence Behavioral Health Hospital, and as a interfaith hospital chaplain, a spiritual care counselor there. And it's a hospital, half psychiatric units, half addiction treatment services. And for instance, one woman, once she's reclaiming her life, is dealing with the incredible pain of actually pushing her elderly mother down to grab an envelope with $200 cash. Another woman who actually took her daughter's piggy bank right in front of her and cursed her daughter. These are haunting them. They're injuries that are vast and deep in their lives, right? In hospice, which I work now with grief counseling and hospice care, and people who have yelled at their loved one, and it turns out the day before they died, or their anger at the medical system for not catching a diagnosis, right? The anger of towards their loved one for not going to the doctor enough, or to checking it out. They saw the growth growing and it wasn't checked out in time. All of these are injuries of kind of values, what you would do and someone else isn't doing it. Or maybe you didn't do enough. The realm of injury, it's part of all of our lives. And there's, of course, reading the newspaper itself, right? Just any day going through the newspaper of the abundant ways that our fundamental values are ignored. If we're for peace and there's war breaking out in the world, we're for a healthy community and healthy rivers and healthy air, and we see our leaders ignoring these fundamental needs, values that we carry. So what to do, right? That's why from moral injury, moral distress, moral outrage, to moral resilience. So what is that, right? So like that's part of my, just trying to name it like that, this kind of a structure, because quite truthfully, I've lived with moral outrage so much, and it spurs my activism, and it also spurs tremendous amounts of apathy, where I just turn away. I kind of come in and out, It's like, ugh, how do we ground ourselves? And I think about what is it that like civil rights leaders, and how about who was in the NAACP in the 1920s? How did they do it? How did they do it? They had no pretext that the government, the police was for them on their side, and yet there they were, able to work together and not get drowned in the moral outrage, moral injury, moral distress that was an everyday occurrence in their community, right? What supports did they find, And it can be as simple as Angela Davis, great prison reformer and activist, shares a story that when she was a kid, 4 years old, the circus came to town. And she just wanted to see it so much in her, she couldn't because of the color of her skin. And when her mom, she just began to cry and cry and cry. And she remembers her mom just held her and said, I know, baby, I know. And she said, it's not supposed to be this way. It's not supposed to be that. She said those words have stayed with her whole entire life as a counter to the moral injury that she would witness and living with. That is just our everyday society. And there are people who are looking at how do we move our moral injury? How do we acknowledge it and live with it and repair it even? Right? And it's pretty simple, really, I guess, in some ways. It's naming what's happening. Just naming it, right? Why we love John Oliver so much, Rachel Maddow, John Stewart. They're just naming outrage. And in some ways, it's like, someone else sees it. How important that is. How important that is. And how do we reframe it? How do we reframe a context? So I sit with folks from hospice who are grieving. We look at all that they are doing as a caregiver, all that they did do. We look at their questions of agency and how far does that extend, and what becomes unrealistic because we want to control everything in the world and follow wherever that leads. We have ways of enacting, doing something about it. Taking responsibility of maybe asking for forgiveness if we're done something irreparable that feels so terrible. Even after people have died, we can still do that, actually. We can write letters and using our imagination, we can address them, we can say, I'm sorry. We can listen for their response. We can build a bigger context for how we understand our actions. Going through fast. I know this is just kind of like a beginning, an introduction, trying to share this. So I hope it's kind of making some sense and gelling a little bit. And because I've been winnowing down from like 60 minutes, how do I get the essence? Mark Twain has that great letter. He says, I'm sorry this letter is 5 pages long. I didn't have time to make it 2 pages. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath here. I want to stress how ordinary this is. Moral injuries developed really with veterans in healthcare, people who do things that they're haunted as a cousin to post-traumatic stress. Trauma is a life and death situation, so the car backfires and you think you're back in the war zone, and it's life and death. Moral injury is this sense of where fundamental values get ignored, and it can be haunting for us. And we live with distress, milder injuries, very serious, in these ways. We live with this, and it's part of, I realize, for me, throughout my life. And what I'd like to kind of end with is this sense that what it brings attention to is the power of reflection, the power of our inner life of doing moral accounting, personal accounting, that there are holidays in the Jewish tradition. The themes of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are all about personal, this repair and communal repair. This hymn that we sang, it's about strengthening moral courage. It seems by just looking at it, that it's no small thing that we have this inner life that affects the outer world. And it seems to me like in older generations, it could have been, sometimes we have the word like superstitions for other cultures far away. But what they're doing is they believe that their actions actually affect the world around them. And it seems to me this is saying that is radically true. Our actions, what we do, does affect the world around us in very significant ways. And it's so important to kind of ground ourselves, to kind of orient, to remember that, How do we remember that? In a way, it's more Viktor Frankl than Abraham Maslow, meaning to sociologists, psychologists, we live in Maslow's society of a hierarchy of needs, that we need our food and shelter before we can even think about higher meaning making. And it's so critical that we provide food and shelter for each other, so critical, all right? But Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps in World War II, and is a psychiatrist, and he noticed some people were able to continue to help others, even there, and others just kind of, retreated within, into paralysis. And what's the difference? And he said, it's meaning making. And so this sense of inner meaning, having the power to animate our life, no matter what our outer conditions are. Right? So in a way, and I feel like being here in a religious community, we're trying to remember that the inner life is important. When our world in America is so outwardly directed, even self-help or 7 steps to being a highly effective people or how to win friends and influence people and all, this is all about outward stuff, right? Outward, but what's our own accounting? How do we look honestly? How do we realize we all have our moral compass? And it's always going by just motivating us as how we react and work together. And so the hope for me, again, is this sense of bringing this territory to life with a new frame, that maybe we can even just get to the place of, like just what's a little bit of spiritual normalcy, whatever that is, and maybe a little bit of moral courage in our life, let alone reaching the heights of moral grandeur and spiritual audacity. Thank you.
I just personally feel like a moment of silence. Just let that sink in. I think coming to this church on Sunday is one of the ways we express that intent to keep being the ones who help, the ones who hold it all and reach out and serve. And sometimes that's the only antidote to all the injuries that have happened. So let's join in singing hymn number 115, God of Grace. Let's stand. God of grace and God of glory, God of faithful, God of dawn, God of glory, God of love, grant us courage, grant us courage for the facing of this hour, for the facing of this hour. Around us, blood, the bright and silver from gaze, that down had bound us, lift our hearts to faith and praise. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the living of these days, for the living of these days. Children's roaring madness, bend our pride to the control. And selfish gladness, rich in things and poor in soul. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the facing of this hour, for the facing of this hour. Let us with the living vision heal our wounds that we may be. Let us walk beyond our vision, with us struggle to be free. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, always Once again, I just give thanks for all the poets in our hymn book and how they can grasp the essence of a message in simple little phrases. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage. Yeah. Okay. So now is our time to share personal joys and sorrows. Someone will come around with the mic. Looks like it'll be Rob Peck. And we request that you make this about a personal joy or concern and not a political announcement of any kind. There will be time after the service for announcements. And keep it brief, please. But also, if there's anyone here for the first time, we really would appreciate you introducing yourself so we can give you a special welcome. All right, and Kate will light a candle for each of the sharings, and we'll check in with the people on Zoom too. So, does anyone have a joy? Introduce yourself too.
Hi, I'm Robin Penagakos, and I'm just so happy to be back after having missed 2 whole Sundays. And I was given a list of people who might give me a ride because Sandra and Pam have not been able to. And I've got to say that I was given the wrong number, I think, for Kate Mason, because every time I called, this person would say, "Stop calling me." So it's a real joy to be here.
That's what she always says to me.
Morning, my name is Russ. Please light a candle for Jennifer and Melvin Lawrence. They were members here for years. They live in Texas now, and they just posted on Facebook that they were in a car accident. Jennifer is doing okay. The car is totaled. Melvin's in the hospital. He needs some facial surgery. So the picture of him, it didn't look all that great, but he's smiling and looking forward to coming home. So please light a candle for them.
Hi, I'd like to light a candle for my friend Krista Hultgren, who was just diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the prognosis looks good. It was caught early, but I definitely want to light a candle and keep her in our hearts.
My name is Josiana. I live here in Greenfield, and I came here the last time about 11 years ago. We've got little ones, and we had been going to Northampton. They're grown now, so I'm probably going to be splitting my time between here and Northampton. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. What can we do to diminish the time in Northampton?
Good morning. I'm Katie. I also have not been here in ages in person, so it's wonderful to be in this beautiful building where I have so many good memories. And I would like to light a candle for my family. I will be going to Maryland for 3 weeks to help care for my 94-year-old dad, who's a very difficult person, and who I've not seen in a long time, and there's a lot of heartache and difficulty there, and disconnect with his very difficult wife, and so she will not be there, and my sister and my sister's kids and I will be there, and just in prayer of, the combination of joy and sorrow that goes along with these family times. So thank you.
Moral resiliency in action.
Hi, my name is Karen Schaefer, and I have such a joy today, especially listening to David Arafat. I don't know if you still live in the community of the, yes, right, and I used to go to hear him talk there, it's interesting. I told him the joke about how when I went to the Unitarian Church in Arlington County, Virginia, we wouldn't sing "This Little Light of Mine," we'd sing "This Little Liberal Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And also that I was married at the Ethical Society, and I don't know if you know, it was created by a very liberal rabbi who said, "You can't make it any more liberal," and so that's how he started the Ethical Society. And in fact, the minister at the Unitarian Church, when he left, he became a leader in the Ethical Society, which I think is interesting. And just the joy of what he talked about, and yes, being able to care for everyone.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom?
We do have a couple folks who would like to share on Zoom. The first is from Christine Bates, and she shares, I am heartbroken at the loss of my friend Logan. Also, I am still calling for us to take action to stop the genocide in Palestine. And Cindy and Owen would like to share. I would like to light a thank you candle for the juncos enjoying weed seeds in our wintry garden beds. I'm assuming juncos is a bird, perhaps? I know Owen loves birds, so I'm assuming that's what that is. And that's all.
I'm Kate. I'm Kate, and I think this is 2 candles. I'll let Rob do it because I have a prop. First of all, I woke up this morning thinking, wow, the days are so short. How could they be so short? And then I realized it's been 74 years that they've been doing this, and it's so it's an everyday, it's every year thing. It just struck me that I've been dealing with this for 74 years. And then I want to say, it's so nice to come into the sanctuary. We decorated it last Sunday. And and I want to thank Murray and Patrick for bringing the poinsettias to decorate. And I want to demonstrate that this is a mitten tree. And so we have mittens, socks, and hats to contribute to some schools and have the school nurses give it to kids who come not well dressed for winter. So please bring in hats, socks, gloves, scarves, whatever, and this tree will be gorgeous by Christmas Eve when we're going to have a big party here.
In honor of David and Brian and myself, I feel duty-bound to point out that there's also a magnificent menorah. Because we are a very honoring church. I will eventually. So, Kate, if you would light a candle of sorrow for a dear friend who went to the doctor and, like, the next day was in surgery. And it's serious surgery, and even if it works, it may be that he's still got a really long, hard journey in front of him. And the opposite, a candle of relief and joy. My daughter has been tracking my issue with my lungs. I have something that thankfully is not tuberculosis, but is apparently a kind of more mild version. And she made the mistake of going online and reading about it and making herself absolutely petrified that my days were numbered. But Friday we saw the pulmonologist, and the pulmonologist reassured us both that I'm going to live, and that with any luck, what I'm dealing with is something that can eventually get a little bit improved. And the happiest moment for me was when we walked out to the car. My now 32-year-old child hugged me so tightly and said, "Dad, I've never been so happy to be wrong."
Wonderful.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Maria. I wasn't going to say anything, but my head keeps saying moral compass, moral compass. And I thought I had one in my pocket. I don't always use it. So thank you, David, for reminding me to take that out of my pocket once in a while, more often, and realize that there's more in my life that I can do as long as I follow my own moral compass. So thank you for that. And thank you all. I'm going to try real hard to be on time. But I love Sunday mornings. The birds were out today. The scenery was so beautiful, and I'm just grateful for that.
Let's not forget the piano player.
Hi, I don't usually speak and make an offering, but I felt inspired today after hearing David speak. So I've made 3 trips to Germany to perform Jewish music. This was about 15 to 12 years ago, 3 different times. And it's a fascinating thing. First of all, in all of Europe, the type of music I play is called klezmer music, so it's Jewish folk music. In all of Europe, Germany has the most active Jewish music and klezmer scene. There are the most bands, and we're talking mostly non-Jews that are playing Jewish music and writing original Yiddish songs and things like that. So some of the places that I performed were old Jewish synagogues that after World War II there was a restoration program, and now they are concert venues. I also remember, I can't remember which city, but in one of the cities, the government buildings after World War II were redesigned with all glass. And the idea was that there would be more transparency in government. So I guess these are just examples of how things can change for the better.
Here's to a glass capital.
All right. Let's conclude this with the singing of Prayer to Friends. The words and music are in the front of your hymnal on a loose piece of paper. To this day, born of hope, born of sin, yearning joy where others strive. All I have, all I am, help me to be what I see. Help me to be where I must be. Restless faith, the heart to walk free. Turn my heart, turn my hand. Out of the dusk, a shadow, then a spark. Out of the cloud, a silence, then a lark. Out of the heart, a rapture, then a pain. Out of the dead, cold ashes, life again. Go in peace, create peace, be peace. Amen.
Steht a Bocher ohne Tracht, Tracht und Tracht a ganze Nacht, wenn man zu nehmen und nicht verschämen, wenn man zu nehmen und nicht verschämen. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala like, spielbala like, tumbala like, freilich soll sein. narische Boche, wo's darfst zu fragen, a stehen kein wachsen, wachsen und regen, Liebe kann brennen und nicht aufhören, a Herz kann banken, weinen und tränen. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala like, spielbala like, tumbala like, freilich soll sein. Tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala, tumbala, tumbala like, tumbala like, spielbala like, tumbala like, freilich soll sein.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's time for announcements, and we also hope people will join us for coffee and snacks afterwards.
So there's a thing called the Spirit of Reparations, and actually we're the third movie that will be shown here tonight. Come at 5. The movie's only an hour long. Stone Soup is going to be providing some hot food, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. And I went down to Northampton and I saw the movie, a different movie, last night. And I'll tell you, Sister Pat is Gullah Geechee, and she flew up here. She's a wonderful storyteller. She is definitely, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know she's worth coming to hear. She's a great storyteller and lots of wisdom. So that's tonight here in our sanctuary. Anybody else have any other announcements?
Hi. For anybody who's here for the first time, we'd really love it before you go if you put your name in our guest book in the entryway. If you want to leave contact information so you can hear from us again, leave that too. But if you don't want to, don't sweat it. But we really do love to see the names of folks who've been here. Oh, by the way, I have copies of our monthly newsletter, so if anybody's here for the first time and like a copy, you can see what our services are and other things going on, and my cute little greetings essay on the front page. Thanks.
One other thing, on Thursday evening, there's going to be an open house at my house at 3 o'clock, and the goal is to make holiday cards and get them addressed and sent out. So probably watercoloring or magic markering or whatever. We'll eat around 5 and be home. Let me know if you want to come.
In case you're wondering how this church runs so seamlessly and everything in here is perfect, we're trying our best to juggle a lot of different things. And by we, I mean the people who are taking a little leadership and trying hard to provide some service to the church. So those of you who are involved in some level of leadership in the church, could you raise your hand? And then if any of you might be interested in learning a little bit more about how to get involved, come talk to us. We would be delighted to see if it might be a good fit.
I have something that Ellen Blanchette would like to share. Just a reminder that the Social Justice Committee meeting that was scheduled for today has been canceled.